everyone, Infinitecaz here, and welcome back to another weapon guide. Today, we will be discussing a weapon that I have been enjoying lately, that being the carbon roller. The lightweight body of the normal splat roller, this weapon can be incredibly scary in the right hands. And even though it's the opposite of my normal playstyle, there is something about this weapon that I adore. With that being said, let's get right into it. As I briefly mentioned, the carbon roller is the lightest of its class, that being if you don't count brushes under the splat roller umbrella. It's classified as a middleweight weapon, so despite what you may first think, you won't get a swim and run speed buff over other weapons off the bat. However, it has the fastest attack speed of any roller, and moves the fastest when rolling as well. It only takes 0.15 seconds to lift the roller, compared to the splat roller at over double this at 0.33 seconds. Not saying a third of a second is slow, but in many situations that speedy attack can be a lifesaver. You move noticeably faster when rolling, provided you have ink in your tank. However, you don't recover ink faster after you stop using your weapon. On paper, the differences may not seem that noticeable, but actually playing with the carbon, you get a feel for its speed that isn't found on any other roller. A horizontal fling does 100 damage max, while a vertical will do up to 120. If you didn't know, a roller has two attacks. The horizontal is your normal one, and has a wider hitbox, but lesser range. Your vertical fling is activated when pressing the trigger in mid-air, and does slightly more damage at a longer range, but has a narrower hitbox as a drawback. However, you still need to be close up to do the damage to one shot regardless. The further away you get, the less damage you do. This bottoms out at 25 for a horizontal and 40 for the vertical. But at this range, your shots are so inconsistent, you will probably do no damage anyway, as the ink has variations in how it travels. The ink for the carbon's horizontal swing spreads out once you get past a short distance, but hitting an opponent in this range deals very inconsistent damage. So when attacking, you should be aiming to hit people as close to the middle as possible, given that often you have one shot at that splat before your opponent turns on you. When rolling, if you bump into someone, you only do 70 damage. However, this isn't much of an issue, as playing the carbon, you will be rarely using the roll feature, and even less often when you are near enough an opponent. Each swing of the carbon uses 3.5% of your ink tank, meaning you can attack 28 times without having to refill your tank. If your ink has run out, you can still attack, but the roller deals only 40% of its base damage in this situation. When rolling, you use 6% of your tank per second, meaning you can roll for about 17 seconds before your roller runs dry. This means you will rarely have to worry about running out of ink. Considering as a carbon, you will be spending a lot of time in squid form. If you do run out of ink when rolling, you can't paint anything. Your roll will do no damage and you will move slower. So it's always a good idea to be wary of your ink tank in case it runs out in a crucial moment. The carbon roller has two kits, but sadly one of them is kind of obsolete. The Vanilla's kit isn't that bad, with auto bombs and ink storm. Auto bombs can help detect any close opponents and provide pressure at a longer distance. And ink storm is a good painter and can be used to help apply pressure and distract opponents as they retreat. I don't think there is anything inherently wrong with this kit, but you almost never see it because of its competition. The carbon roller decal comes with burst bombs and auto bomb launcher. Burst bombs are the perfect sub for the carbon, a tool to help mobility, paint coverage, and they are a quick damage dealer at a longer range that helps soften up or deal the last bit of damage needed if you are unable to one-shot someone. The special, being auto bomb launcher, is also pretty good. It provides greater pressure and paint, as well as giving you a way to track any opponents in an area. However, it's not super aggressive compared to something like the inkjet, so you will still need to rely on your main weapon to get splats for you. I think the additions of burst bombs is what makes the carbon deco so fun, and I would strongly recommend this kit over its less threatening counterpart to anyone picking up this weapon for the first time. So now we know a bit about the carbon roller. How do you play this weapon? The carbon is a slayer, and its primary goal is to get as many splats as possible. You don't paint too well, and you won't be expected to. If you know what sharking is, this is what you will do the majority of the time. Because of your short range and vulnerability, ideally you want your opponents to know your location for as little time as possible. Once you are in range, popping out of the ink and dealing a quick horizontal or vertical fling should be enough to do the job, then rinse and repeat that. You don't want to try and tackle someone head on at a distance, as you will be easily outpainted and picked off. So unless they are in your range, I would advise against trying to engage someone who is actively shooting at you. Your presence as a carbon roller is often intimidating in itself, as people know not to underestimate a good carbon, so use this to your advantage when pushing up, with or without your team. As a carbon player, it's important to know your matchups, and use this to pick your fights wisely. For example, an explosher, if caught off guard, can do very little to you, but a fast killing shooter like a 52 gal is very different. Especially if you use the carbon deco, using your sub followed up by your main weapon can help trap an opponent and ensure the splat. For splatlings, always try to time your jump when their charge has run out, as they are at their most vulnerable. Don't mindlessly rush into an encounter, but time your hits wisely to have the best chance at success. Obviously, you will not always get that one hit, and that's fine. It's usually worth committing to try and get that pick, either with another swing or a burst bomb, as you are just as vulnerable backing up, but forfeiting your chance at winning the engagement. However, if you have been noticed at a distance where you would struggle to one-shot, retreating is not a bad option. It's all about calculating risk and reward, but don't feel too disheartened if you get splatted. It's often unavoidable. While I caution against playing too confidently, it's not a bad thing to sometimes take risks, especially when making a large push or defending in overtime, as playing passively in some situations can be detrimental. There are some drawbacks to this playstyle, the biggest being you often rely on your team to give you paint so you can be effective. It's hard to do much when you don't have control, and unless you can sneak behind your opponents, you won't be doing anything but throwing out your sub and waiting for an overly aggressive player to pick off. This is why teamwork is so important when using the carbon. When you need to paint a path yourself, it's very obvious to an opponent, so try when possible to move in ink already there. If you want to paint for yourself, do it when no opponents are near you, and try to be as discreet as possible. But not to ramble for too long. The more ink you have down on the map, the scarier you are. So never underestimate the power of a partner that can paint well, and teaming up with them can improve your gameplay, as you often cover for your respective weaknesses. The carbon doesn't paint too well, so you will not be as effective as other slayers in splat zones. Because the objective is static, people tend to be more predictable in this mode, so you can use this to your advantage to take similar routes and pick off less mobile weapons. Both carbons have pretty good specials for this mode, so use them when the zone is being contested to gain the upper hand. I would advise from sharking in the zone too often, as that's where the enemy fire will be directed, and you may be found out by someone mindlessly painting the objective. Pushing up into the enemy is often a good idea to distract them from the zone and apply additional pressure, but make sure you don't lose sight of the objective and are shocking near spawn when your team is losing control. Tower control has a pretty small and predictable target, and is great to focus on, provided you remain invisible. Your vertical swing is best for this, and can easily scare people off the tower if you don't manage to splat them. When possible, I would advise against riding the tower, as you are very vulnerable here compared to most of the game's arsenal. Burst bombs on the Carbon Deco do a great job at pressuring the tower from a longer distance and softening up opponents who may be too far away to deal lethal damage with your main weapon. However, if you are defending and your position is known, people will assume you will be aiming for the tower, so be careful about charging in for those crucial splats. Your quick splat and Rainmaker can be crucial to stopping a push, so deciding when to attack in this mode is vital. Often a team will push up and leave the person holding the Rainmaker behind, on the assumption that the enemy team is all pushed back. If you can sneak behind the enemy lines, a pick on a non-suspecting Rainmaker can be crucial, but don't underestimate how dangerous the Rainmaker can be if the right person uses it. Its blast can one-shot you, and if it doesn't, the splash damage paints your feet and makes it very difficult to escape from. I would advise from taking the Rainmaker in most situations, unless you need to get some points on the board right away and don't have a teammate available to pick it up. Also, you don't do a great job at popping the Rainmaker shield, and as you need to be so close up to do damage, be cautious about rushing in to get that first pop, especially if your opponents are running Object Shredder. The Carbon does pretty decent in Clam Blitz, but be cautious when you are collecting clams. As holding a power clam makes you visible, it's a good idea to pass clams around and leave the objective alone for the most part, provided your team pulls their weight. I would recommend spending time near your opponent's basket, disrupting the less aggressive opponents and targeting anyone with a power clam to put a halt on any potential pushes. You can build up a power clam sneakily, then use that to score some easy points, but I would only recommend this in a dire situation. Because the objective never stays still, make good use of your mobility to be a nuisance, and deny any pushes to your basket with a well-timed sneak splat. So to conclude, the Carbon is a very effective slayer that relies on good paint coverage to be effective, but under the right conditions this weapon can really shine. When first picking it up, don't worry about going on massive kill streaks. Just try to get key picks, and team up when possible for some backup. But at the end of the day, have fun. That's what Splatoon is for, after all. The gear you use on the Carbon roller is very important, as the right build can make you much more mobile and consistent. The first must-use ability is Swim Speed Up. Because you are a roller, you will be spending less time painting and more time swimming around looking for splats. Swim speed is a great choice regardless of your weapon, but as you need to be up close to your opponent to deal enough damage, having more mobility in one-on-one engagements is almost a requirement on the Carbon. The amount you run is up to you, but one main is a bare minimum, and ideally more. However, it all depends on what feels good when balancing other abilities you want to use. While not as important as swim speed, I would strongly recommend running some main power up. Anything from one main to a main and 3 subs is a good amount, and this basically makes your weapon damage output more consistent, allowing you to one-hit KO more consistently. There are a few more unique abilities that pair well with the Carbon, the most significant one being Ninja Squid. For a reduction in your base swim speed, you can swim in ink without making those telltale ripples. Ninja Squid is a very situational ability, but it pairs well with the Carbon roller, and makes approaching and escaping from engagements that bit easier. If you run Ninja Squid, you need to add in swim speed, to at least get back to the normal speed, as being stealth with the Carbon is no good when it takes longer to get around. In addition, stealth jump is also a good option if you want to be safer when jumping back into the action. However, if you want to only use one of these, I would lean towards Ninja Squid. Other main-only abilities like Last-Ditch Effort or Combat could be useful, depending on how you play the map mode you are fighting on. For example, you may want to run a Last-Ditch Effort set on zones, as the mode's nature means the ability is more likely to be activated during the game compared to Clan Blitz. For other stackable abilities, I would recommend a sub or two of Ink Resistant Sop, as well as Quick Super Jump and one sub of Bomb Defense Sop DX. You may want to use a sub of Special Saver, and Ink Recovery can also be useful, but nowhere near required. If you want to focus more on your sub weapon, one main and one sub of Sub Saver on the vanilla allows you to throw 2 bombs per ink tank, but you need a whopping 3 mains and 2 subs for 3 burst bombs. So unless you are running a gimmick set, it's not worth it in my eyes on the Carbon Deco. Abilities you shouldn't run are Swim Speed Up, as it doesn't affect rolling speed and is basically useless, as well as Ink Saver Main, as your weapon is not ink heavy, and your playstyle means you will be in ink frequently enough to make the need for a less ink heavy weapon obsolete. However, it's important to remember that how you play the Carbon is unique, so you should make gear sets to match that. Don't feel put off from experimenting and finding abilities that make you play at your best. To summarise, the Carbon Roller is a fun, close-range slayer that can deal a lot of damage in the right hands, but takes a bit of patience to understand how to play properly. Its sneaky playstyle probably won't suit a lot of people, but even as someone who usually dislikes playing short-ranged weapons, I always have fun when I equip the Carbon Roller. Just don't overextend and exercise some patience, and you should have nothing to worry about. That's all for now, and thank you for watching. What do you think of the Carbon Roller? And do you play it? I would love to hear your opinions down in the comments. With that being said, please like and subscribe as it really helps me out, and I will see you all soon. Bye!